back to my channel. My name is Bree Buonomo, and you are watching another monthly wrap-up featuring my little Sookie Pie, because she has to be nosy and everything, don't you? So if you're new here, this is the part where I talk about all the books I read, the things I wrote, and some personal life tidbits that happened in the previous month. In this case, we're talking about July 2024. So without further ado, let's get into the books I read. Nice, short, and sweet this month. I only officially completed 3 books, which I did start others. I started quite a few, and my book club pick for July has been taking me quite a long time to get through, so I could only get through the 3. They were all consumed via audio, and you know what? They were all really great audiobooks. The first is I am trying to finish all the series that I started. So that means I am finishing up the series that are already completed, including Sookie Stackhouse. So this is book maybe 11? Honestly, the one thing I really hate about this series is that this was before they started doing like numbers on the side, like most commonly. I want to say this is, I think there's 13 books in the series, so this was probably 11. I always have to double check which book I read on Goodreads last in order to pick the next one up because I don't know the order. It's not written anywhere. This was my least favorite book of the series so far, which is super disappointing. I feel like it's getting dry, to be honest. It seems very repetitive. It seems like nothing new is being added, and I don't want to spoil this because it's so far in the series. So this whole book is basically like Sookie trying to determine if like the person she's currently with in the series is the right choice for her. There's a little bit of like possessiveness, there's a little bit of like hostility, and of course everyone's out to either like fall in love with Sookie or like try to kill Sookie. So there's some of that in there, but nothing really new has been added in this particular installment. It was still very breezy to get through. I still enjoyed moments of it, but by far it's been the least engaged I've been with the series. And I just hope it ends on a somewhat good note because it is almost over, and just to have read this and knowing that there's 2 more books almost makes me feel like maybe this should have wrapped things up instead of extending it for as long as it was extended, but maybe I'll be proved wrong in the next month when I continue. In the same vein, I read Last Crow Conspiracy, which is the sequel to Blood Rose Rebellion by Rosalind Eves. This is a YA historical fantasy that takes place in like the time when Austria-Hungary, oh my god, I can't even say that, but there's a note in here. Oh, I forgot I pre-ordered this and I didn't even realize there was a note in the back this whole time. Thank you so much for pre-ordering Last Crow Conspiracy. I hope you enjoy the book, and it's from the author. I had no idea this whole time it's been in the like the back of the book and in like the dust jacket. That was very sweet. It also has a signed book plate in here too. So yeah, I had all intentions of reading this book when it came out. It came out in 2018. I read the first book as an ARC. I loved it. It was so good. I immediately pre-ordered this and it immediately sat on my shelf forever. It is in the vein of the Austro-Hungary War. There's like the fights with the different countries. There's a lot of talk about like the Habsburgs, the Romani, and there's a lot of historical figures that are like real people that are tweaked for this story. And the first book follows this. Basically, the magic spin on this is that there are these people called Luminates who have magical abilities, and they are essentially the ones in power in this historical retelling. The world leaders have this magic and are often called Luminates, but they were always kind of like bound by this particular like spell essentially. And the entire first book is kind of following our main character Anna and how she has always been this misfit in this high Luminate family, but not really fitting in with the other Luminates, and also doesn't really have magic, even though she should have magic, and there's something odd about that. So the series kind of follows her journey about what exactly is odd about her and how she fits into the larger society at play, all while all these political things are happening in the world. So I love this. I also, man, I have a signed bookmark in here too. I did try to read this at one point, clearly. But yeah, I really enjoyed this book. This is a very good series. I love this. I think this is such a unique world. It's a unique magic system. It's a very well-written book. And I'm really excited to read the third one to complete the series. I'm sad that I held on to it as long as I did, but we are gonna finish it hopefully next month. And last but not least, I finished In the Wildlight by Jeff Zettner. My heart is so full and so hurtful that this book. Jeff Zettner is such a good author, guys. I feel like everyone's sleeping on him. He primarily writes YA contemporaries, but I believe he wrote an adult contemporary recently. And it's very Southern coded. It's also kind of Appalachian coded. And it usually involves like tough topics. So they're hard-hitting contemporaries. In this book, you follow Cash, who has had a rough life. His mom died of an overdose and he was raised by his grandparents, but as his grandparents are getting elderly, they are also getting more sickly. And Cash has this opportunity to move with his best friend Delaney to this school in Connecticut. It's a private boarding school. Delaney is extremely smart. She found this specific strain of bacteria or mold and they named it after her, so she gets a full ride scholarship. And as part of the deal, she asks to give Cash a scholarship as well in order to make something more of his life. And there's a lot of talk about friendships, a lot of talk about trauma and fear of change and fear of kind of moving on if your family or the people you loved can't. And oh, it was just so well written. And honestly, Zettner has some beautiful lines in this book, like some that really like hit me and I'm like, oh, that was poetry. It's so beautiful. And there is a lot of discussion of poetry and songs and things like that in this book. And it was so beautiful. I love this. This is the second book I've read by Jeff Zettner. It's my second 5-star read from Jeff Zettner. And I think you guys should stop sleeping on him. He's such a good author. Go give him praise. So that was my month of reading. Now to talk about all the things I wrote in the month, which was a lot and yet not at all. So in the month of July, I did submit a couple more pieces out into the world. I submitted some poetry and I believe I submitted 2 more short stories. I did get 3 rejections in the month. My poetry was rejected from Anti-Heroine Chic. My short story, that was a more horror, mental health, psychological horror story, was rejected by Electric Speck. And I also had a short story rejected by Havoc, which was extremely positive, but I did not follow guidelines. So that sucked. You can go watch all about that in my last vlog, but also I have another upcoming vlog next week that will go way more in depth about the Havoc stuff. So if you're interested in that journey of submitting and getting the rejection, then be on the lookout for my next vlog. Outside of submissions, my entire month was dedicated to reading through my vampire novel. As I mentioned in other videos, I kind of wanted to stay on deadline where maybe I can get readers to read my novel in the month of September. In order to do that, I really wanted to try to read through by the end of July to give myself a whole month with the read through and then a whole month of editing. I did in fact complete my read through. I completed it on the 28th, which was a couple days in advance, and I was so happy. I could not believe I got there because I started off a little rough. And I have vlogs all about that process, so if you're interested more, please go watch those vlogs. Outside of my own writing, I did 2 critique exchanges in the month. The first was for my Havoc submission. I swapped stories with my AuthorTube bestie, Autumn Ashley, and I also did work on her short story. So this was a really great challenge, which again, spoiler alert, there's a video coming out for that. But it was really nice to get to read Autumn's work and give some feedback and try to just help each other out with our writing. In addition to Autumn's short story, I also read an entire book for somebody else and gave very intense, thorough critiques. I am not one who will just like talk here and there. Like pretty much anything that sticks out to me, anything that I think might be contradictory or might not make sense or might be better expanded upon, like I will point out everything, which means it takes me quite a long to get through my beta reads. I am not like a 1 week flat person. I'm not even a weekend person. I need an entire month, and that is if I'm grinding. And grinding I did. I was like, I am gonna finish this as soon as I can. It took me a little bit longer than expected, but at the end of the day, I was able to finish it up and give my final thoughts, and I hope that that was helpful and they will be able to eventually publish this successfully. But that was pretty much it. I didn't write any new short stories. I didn't write any new poetry. I did have a couple ideas for some stuff that has been marinating in the back of my head. I've also been marinating some ideas in the month about what I want to do for my next novel. I know we're jumping ahead of things, so I brain dumped a little bit when I got ideas, but I didn't fixate on anything. But I have like 3 contenders that I'm deciding on. One is like a light satire, funny, comedic story, which may be a nice break. The other, it would be likely a series, and it would be a high fantasy, which would be tricky because I would probably have to plot out a series, and I am not published yet, so I wouldn't want to plot out a whole series without having an agent and running this by them first, but it's an option. And the other one is actually one that might easily be the most difficult novel I would ever write, because I have been thinking on this idea, and I think in order to do it justice, it kind of has to be in like a time out of time scenario where it's like loosely based on our real life, something like how The Year of the Witching is done by Alexis Henderson. But I also think I want to do it dual timelines, which is tricky. And I've never tried it before, but I kind of am excited about the challenge. So that's just some things I've been thinking about what I want to maybe do for my next book, and whether or not I get it done for NaNoWriMo or I'm going to start writing it next year. Like, I'm excited to have some options, and I'm just throwing ideas down on a piece of paper when I get them. So that was my month of writing. And lastly, I have very few personal life tidbits, but a few that I want to share. So in terms of media watched, I watched My Lady Jane in July, and guys, I loved it so much. I love My Lady Jane the book. Like, I read that. It was one of the first books I got from Owl Crate. I read it pretty quickly because at that time I didn't have this huge, massive collection on my shelves. And it was so fun. It was so funny. I've been a dedicated reader since. I read all the Jane series, and I bought the Mary series. I just haven't gotten to those yet, but they're great. And I love the show. I think it was everything I ever wanted. We also, of course, had to go see Deadpool in the theaters. I completely forgot it was coming out, but I've always loved the X-Men growing up, and Deadpool 1 and 2 were movies that I really enjoyed. So I was very interested to see how Deadpool was going to be in the MCU, and a little nervous, I won't lie. I do think the movie was very MCU coded. It had like its beats that it pretty much stuck to, but I still loved the majority of it. The opening scene was wonderful. My little millennial heart was ecstatic to see it. And there was a lot of great parts too. I liked the characters it brought in. Gambit was by far my favorite part of the entire movie. But I won't say anything else because I don't want to spoil it in case you're interested, but I just really liked this movie. It was a really fun time. I could have just done with less crotch grabbing. It was a really overplayed joke in the entire movie, in my opinion, but that's just not my type of humor. The rest of it was funny though. As far as like things that I did, I got to go to an orchard with my friends and my husband. We went blackberry picking, we got to pick sunflowers, and then we had some apple cider and then just hung out. We did some axe throwing. It was really hot, so we didn't stay as long as we probably would have normally, but it was a really nice day and it was nice to see my friends. In my vlogs, I've already mentioned, but I did go to try to see the ghost town Edgerton to get some information and inspiration for my novel, where I am now going to essentially set my vampire like where he grew up in. And I was really excited about that, even though there's nothing there anymore. It has also kickstarted my obsession with learning everything about mining towns in Pennsylvania, but that will be research to come. And I kept up pretty much with some of my outdoorsy regimens. I went swimming, I believe, once. Sadly, not more than that, but I hopefully will get to swim a little bit more before it gets too cold again. I did go on a bike ride, which was lovely, and I went on a couple walks. So nothing too crazy in the month. I couldn't remember if I did much more. I had a little write-in with Diane Marie just to get some words in, and that was wonderful to catch up on, but overall, it was just a very casual month. We did trivia again, and we officially won trivia for once, where we got the reward, and that was great. And that's it. I don't think I did much else that I would be noteworthy of anyway. So yeah, a relatively easy month. and hopefully you guys had a great month as well. I would love to know what your highs and lows were. So if you've made it this far, leave me your best book of the month. And if you didn't read anything, that's okay. Just tell me the highlight of your month of July. And that is it for me for now. Stay tuned because next week I will have another vlog, as I've already alluded to, and I hope you guys will watch that one. But until then, I will see you then. Bye.